He had seen scenes that tightened his chest before, but nothing haunted him like that morning on Hawthorne Boulevard in the heart of a Portland scorched by July. The heat felt like a furnace. Asphalt steamed. The smell of tar and dust rolled in waves. People hurried past as if, by taking another breath, the heat might swallow them whole. Each person carried their own rhythm, coffee in hand, phone to ear. He froze. At the cracked curb, at the lip of a black storm drain, a small shape refused to leave his sight. A Doberman puppy. Nova. She was all bone. Ribs showed like curved slats. Her black and tan coat was matted in patches of mud, rough as burnt grass. Her ears hung. Her head bowed. But the eyes, God, those eyes, were fixed on the endless dark inside the drain. They did not waver. They did not look away. People said she had been there 3 days and 3 nights. Not an inch of movement. No food, no sleep. Rain soaked her one night. The next morning sun baked her dry. Always one posture, back straight, front legs planted like pillars, gaze drilled into that yawning black hole. Passers-by saw her. How could they not? A tiny, exhausted life sitting like a stone at the drain's edge. Impossible to miss on the sidewalk. Yet they slid past. A few lifted phones for a quick photo, posted it with a joke. Someone tossed a stale crust of bread, not out of mercy, but like feeding a sparrow for sport. Then they moved on, never looking back. The indifference made him shiver. In the city's frantic tempo, a skinny puppy waiting to die beside a drain did not merit another minute of anyone's time. He watched her. He had seen animals pleading looks before. Fear, begging, searching for a hand to save them. Nova's look was different. There was no pleading, no panic, only a steady, quiet resolve, the same look he had seen on soldiers in a trench, staring in one direction because in that direction lay something more important than their own lives. Sometimes a car rolled too close. A tire hissed through the leftover puddle and splashed the puppy's thin coat. Nova did not move. A woman pushed a stroller. Her little girl tugged her sleeve and pointed. "Mom, why doesn't it go away?" The mother tightened her grip and walked faster. The child's gaze stayed on the dog, puzzled and aching, while the adult chose to turn away. In that silence, he saw how easy callousness could be. Then, faint as wind, he heard it. A sound so slight he might have missed it if he'd breathed. A soft, choked whimper from Nova's throat. Not a cry for help, not a call. More like a reminder. There is something here. Don't leave his heart clenched. She was not a stray. She was not hunting for food. She was not lost. She was keeping a promise, guarding a secret beneath the ground. The world could be indifferent, but she was not. He looked at the river of people, then back at Nova. Anger rose in him. Anger that a small creature could hold her ground 3 days to protect something, while so many full-minded humans pretended not to see. At the same time, a strange reverence swelled. He recognized a pure, unflinching loyalty, a heart that did not know how to turn its back. In Portland's blistering heat, amid the city's cold indifference, a puppy did what few humans would dare. She watched, she waited, and she would not leave. He understood then that if he walked away, the truth might stay buried in that dark hole forever. He could not. He would not. They say a city never stops for a single, fragile life. I used to believe that, until I watched Nova's eyes seep into every corner of Hawthorne Avenue, slowing the rhythm of a street that never knew how to wait. On the 4th morning of her vigil, Clara Martinez appeared. She wore a faded running shirt, earbuds tucked in, her breath quick and even with her stride. Clara was not the kind of woman who stopped, but that morning she did. Something unnameable made her pull the earbuds free and glance down. Nova was still there, straight as a pillar, gaze nailed to the darkness in the drain. I heard Clara whisper, almost to herself, "Strange, she's been here since yesterday." The words, tossed like dust, awakened something in me. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Someone else had paused. From the third-floor balcony of an old brick building, Mrs. Eleanor Griffin braced her elbows against a rusted railing, pressing flaking binoculars to her eyes. A retired Army nurse, she had lived alone for years, but her look carried the unmistakable instinct of someone who had once faced battlefields. After a few minutes of watching, she muttered, low and certain, "She's not searching for food. She's not seeking shelter. She's standing guard, like a sentry." The words drifted down to the street, reaching the ears of Mr. Yusuf Rahman, owner of the corner grocery. He folded his newspaper, set aside his lawn chair, and walked toward Nova. In his hands, a scrap of meat and a bowl of cold water. He placed them a few feet away, then lowered himself onto a plastic stool he had carried out. No coaxing, no force, just silent waiting. Nova did not turn. She spared him a brief glance, eyes heavy with sorrow yet frighteningly steady. Then she returned to the drain as if nothing beyond that hole even existed. Whispers began to ripple. Curtains parted. Neighbors leaned out. A few schoolchildren pedaling home braked to watch. No teasing, no noise, just silence, as though Nova had transformed the street into sacred ground none dared to profane. Hannah Lee pushed a stroller along the sidewalk. Her 6-year-old daughter, Sophie, stopped cold, gaze fixed on Nova. The child's voice was soft as air. "Mom, why does she stay? Who's she waiting for?" Hannah knelt to meet her eyes, though her own gaze lingered on the puppy. Her reply caught in her throat. "I don't know, sweetheart. But there's something in those eyes. As if she's waiting for someone she loves to come back." The little girl sighed, a small sound weighted with sadness no child should ever carry. Under the punishing sun, in the rush of a city that never paused, this skinny puppy made hearts falter, not by begging, not by crying, by silence. Nova's stillness forced every eye downward, compelled every soul to ask, what could she be guarding down there? By noon, the entire block seemed to hold its breath. In each face I saw hesitation, laced with a nameless fear. Because they knew, if a puppy could stand watch for 3 days and nights without moving, then whatever lay beneath that drain was not emptiness. It was life. It was family. It was the reason she existed. And from that moment, curiosity became concern. Concern became a quiet wave that threaded through every glance, every breath. Nova, the nameless dog, had turned an ordinary street into a gathering of reluctant witnesses to a truth waiting to be uncovered. The city was usually so loud that no one could hear their own breath. But on the 4th day of Nova's vigil at that drain, something strange happened. Hawthorne Boulevard seemed to swallow sound whole. I stood there, I don't know how long, feeling only the sun pressing into the fabric of my shirt. Clara lingered, hands on her knees, restless eyes fixed on Nova. Above, Eleanor Griffin kept her binoculars pressed so tight to her face that it looked as if a single blink might lose her the answer. On the corner, Yusuf Rahman sat slumped in his folding chair. The bowl of water he'd set before Nova had already evaporated in the heat, yet she hadn't looked back once. Even Hannah and little Sophie had not moved on. The girl held her mother's hand, silent in a way children never are. I realized then, the silence wasn't just around Nova. It was spreading. From sidewalk to street, from the awning of the corner store to the 3rd-floor balcony, everything had been pulled into the hush cast by one frail creature. Nova didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't move, except for a few tiny steps forward toward the drain, only to return to her exact place, as if she had drawn an invisible circle, sacred ground no one dared to break. From above, Eleanor's raspy voice floated down, almost like a confession. She isn't waiting for rescue. She's guarding something. The moment the words left her lips, Nova shivered. A low whimper slipped from her throat, not loud enough to be a cry, not strong enough to be a plea. But it cut straight through the silence and struck every heart watching. I felt a tension tighten around the street, unseen but suffocating. A schoolboy on his bike, just home from class, stopped to stare. Slowly he whispered, "There's something in there. She sees what we don't." The crowd went still. His words spoke what everyone had been choking on. I looked at Nova again. Her coat was ragged, her eyes hollowed by thirst, but there was no surrender in them. On the contrary, the longer she sat, the sharper her resolve became. A silent force radiated from her small body, pinning us all in place. No one laughed. No one dared to speak above a whisper. Then a sudden gust scattered an old newspaper along the curb. Nova lifted her head, ears pricking, eyes locked tighter on the black void of the drain. A chill streaked down my spine. Something was down there. Sophie tugged at her mother's sleeve, her voice trembling. "Mom, I'm scared." Hannah squeezed her hand, bent low to comfort her, but I caught the quiver in her tone. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. Someone will come, someone will help." Her words cracked the air, and I realized I'd been holding my breath. It wasn't just Sophie who was afraid. We all were. No one wanted to admit it, but everyone knew. This dog wasn't here for nothing. She hadn't fought 3 days and nights just on instinct. She knew. Something waited in that pit, and she would guard it until someone dared to descend. The silence grew heavier. Even the traffic horns seemed to vanish near that block, as if the whole city had been forced to stand still, waiting for a truth to surface from the earth. I glanced at the faces around me. Clara biting her lip, Yusuf's calloused hand clenched, Eleanor's eyes raw against her binoculars, Sophie burying her face in her mother's dress. No one left. Not one of us. We were bound to Nova's gaze, captives of her silence, and in that moment I understood. If a small dog could turn a crowded street into a chapel of stillness with nothing but her loyalty, then what she was guarding could not be nothing. It was life, a life waiting to be named. The heat in Portland pressed down on Hawthorne like it meant to melt the pavement itself, but it wasn't the sun that made people struggle for breath. It was the silence, a silence that smothered the street, holding every soul captive. Nova still sat there, rigid as stone, her eyes locked on the drain as though every breath in her body was tethered to the darkness below. Then a white pickup rolled to a stop at the curb. The door swung open, and Officer Naomi Carter stepped out, the animal control officer I'd seen on rescue reports. Small in frame but steady, hair pulled tight, her eyes sharp as they swept the crowd before falling on Nova. She didn't rush. She eased the truck door closed, as if afraid a slam might shatter something sacred. Clara leaned forward on her toes. Sophie's little hand clamped her mother's so hard the knuckles blanched. All of us waited, breath caught, watching Naomi move step by careful step. "Hey, little one." Her voice was low, even, the kind that had soothed hundreds of terrified animals before. "What are you guarding in there?" Nova didn't move toward her. She didn't growl, didn't flinch. She turned her head just enough to meet Naomi's eyes, exhausted, unyielding, as if to say, "You're here now. I've held this place long enough. It's your turn." A shiver ran through me. I'd never seen a gaze speak so clearly. Naomi crouched low, unclipped a flashlight from her belt, and angled it into the drain. The beam swept over damp concrete walls, moss, and shadows stretching into an endless throat. At first, nothing, just empty black. She tilted closer, even switched off her radio to keep the moment still, pressing her ear near the opening. A long hush, then sound, faint, fragile, a whimper. Not from Nova, from below, a thread of life trembling on the verge of breaking. Naomi drew a sharp breath, thumbed her radio back on. "This is Carter. I've got signs of life in the drain. Requesting immediate rescue support. Code urgently." The crowd rippled like a struck chord, hearts clenched in unison. Clara clapped a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. Eleanor on the balcony lowered her binoculars with trembling hands, lips moving soundlessly. Hannah held Sophie tighter, the girl burying her face in her chest. Nova sprang upright, ears sharp, body taut as a bowstring. No bark, no howl. Just a tremor along her shoulders, her gaze locked, unblinking, because at last the signal she'd been waiting for had risen from the dark. The silence thickened into something unbearable, strung tight as wire. My own heartbeat slammed against my ribs, and in that moment, I understood. Nova hadn't kept vigil in vain. She knew, she'd heard, and she had waited for the right human to hear it too. 15 minutes later, sirens shattered the stillness. Red and blue lights pulsed across windows. Police tape stretched, sealing off the block. Neighbors crowded behind the yellow line, hushed, every breath fixed on the mouth of that drain. Naomi stayed beside Nova, one hand resting gently on the pup's back. And I swear I saw it. The flicker in Nova's eyes, softening. Still tense, still braced, but the edge of despair had shifted. In its place was a quiet spark of hope. Nova had kept her promise through 3 endless days and nights. Now, it was our turn. The wail of fire sirens still echoed, lingering like the blare of a warning horn. Red and blue lights flickered against old window panes, painting the street in pulses. Hawthorne Boulevard was sealed off. Yet instead of chaos, there was a strange hush. No shouting, no chatter, only the pounding of our own hearts as we stood behind the yellow tape, eyes locked on one point: the drain. Nova stayed rooted, her thin back arched like a bow drawn taut, ears rigid, eyes blazing in the wash of headlights, never leaving the black mouth below. To a stranger, she might have looked like a trained K-9 on reconnaissance. But I knew the truth. She was just a puppy, 3, maybe 4 months old, never taught a single command. What held her there wasn't a leash. It was her heart. Daniel Brooks stepped forward, a firefighter with broad shoulders and hands worn hard. I'd heard his name before. The man who had crawled under collapsing roofs to pull out children left behind. But tonight his eyes lingered on Nova longer than on the drain. He gave a small nod, as if bowing to a fellow soldier. "I'm going down," he said, steady, without hesitation. Naomi handed him a headlamp. A safety line cinched around his waist. When the hook clipped to the anchor, the dry clack rang out like a drumbeat against our ribs. No one dared breathe. No one moved. Daniel lowered himself slowly, boots finding the slick concrete inside the drain. The rope hissed against metal as it pulled tight. We followed the bobbing light strapped to his forehead, watched it sway and fade as he sank into the dark. 8 feet, his voice echoed, warped by concrete. "There's a cavity." Room to stand, I swallowed hard, palms wet with sweat. Eleanor leaned so far over her balcony that I thought she might fall. Clara clutched the strap of her tank top. Yusuf whispered prayers under his breath. Hannah covered Sophie's eyes, though her own hands shook just as much. Then, silence. A silence that hollowed us out. "I see something,"
Daniel's voice came back, thudding up through the earth. "There's movement." We froze. Nova pressed forward, her body stiff, ready to leap. Her eyes glowed, catching the flicker of emergency lights. "A kitten, orange, and a white rabbit." Daniel's voice broke. "They're alive." Weak, but breathing. The street erupted, but not in cheers, not in applause. Instead, faces crumpled, eyes wet, hands clapped over mouths to hold back sobs. I saw Yusuf bow his head, shoulders shaking. Clara whispered, "Thank God." Eleanor's tears spilled, her binoculars slipping from her grip and clattering to the balcony floor. And Nova, she stepped closer. Just one step. Her tail trembled, her ears sagged. As if inside her chest, a small flame sparked back to life, fragile but unyielding. The flame of belief. She knew. Her family was still alive. Daniel's voice softened, so gentle I almost thought I imagined it. "I'll bring them up." Slowly. They're like glass hearts. We waited. The air was so thick that even breathing felt like hammers pounding in the chest. On Hawthorne's cracked sidewalk, under the blistering summer sun, dozens of strangers and one starving pup formed a circle, eyes pinned to the rope feeding into the earth, carrying one man down to lift two tiny lives back into the light. I looked at Nova. For the first time in 3 endless days, she wasn't still as stone. She trembled, as if ready to leap, but her paws held her to the ground. Her gaze never wavered. She understood. She wasn't guarding alone anymore. The radio crackled, then Daniel's voice rose from the depths, shaky but steady. "I've got the kitten. Bringing it up first." All eyes locked on the drain. The rope quivered, light swaying from his headlamp, until a hand broke through the dark, calloused, steady, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a rescue blanket of faded blue. When the small orange head of the kitten appeared, the entire street went silent. Skin and bone, eyes sealed shut, its breath barely a thread, but alive. And that was enough. Nova stepped forward. The faint scuff of her paws made everyone flinch, but she didn't leap. Instead, she bowed low, inhaling the fragile breath of the kitten. Then, for the first time in 3 endless days, she made a sound, not a strangled whimper, but a cry that spilled over, raw and wet. She pressed her tongue gently to the kitten's forehead, once, twice, as if she were wiping away 3 days of darkness. No cheers, no applause, only tears. Yusuf's hands covered his face, shoulders trembling. Clara folded into her arms. From the balcony, Eleanor sobbed aloud, tears streaking the rusted railing. Hannah clutched Sophie close, and the girl whispered upward, "She found her family, Mom." Daniel's voice echoed again, distant, almost otherworldly. "There's a rabbit. I'm bringing it now." This time, when the trembling white form emerged from the dark, Nova broke. She lunged forward, but Naomi's steady hand pressed gently against her back. Nova froze, trembling, then lowered her head in silence. When the rabbit touched ground, it didn't flee, didn't cower. It burrowed straight into Nova's chest, curling beneath her frail front legs, lying still as though it had found the only place it belonged. Nova closed her eyes, lowered her head onto its soft fur, and exhaled, long, warm, whole, the breath of someone who had reclaimed the missing piece of her heart. I don't know when I began to cry, but through the blur of tears, I saw clearly. A starving puppy had kept her own promise, braving sun, rain, and hunger to guard her family from the swallowing dark. "No one made her do this," Naomi whispered, her voice breaking. "She chose to stay." The rescue van rolled out. In the back, Nova refused the kennel. They spread a blanket across the floor, and she curled around the kitten and the rabbit, her bony frame wrapped as though breathing for all 3. We followed Dr. Margaret Hayes's clinic, just 6 blocks away. No sirens, no rush. Everything unfolded slowly,
hushed, reverent. Dr. Hayes placed the kitten on the exam table. At once, Nova rose, paws braced against the metal, eyes fixed on every movement of the doctor's hands. No growls, no snapping, only relentless vigilance. "She's about 3 weeks old," Hayes murmured, stroking the kitten's spine. "No fractures. No pneumonia. Just exhaustion." Then she looked down at Nova, resting her hand gently across the pup's back. Her gaze softened, as though beholding something sacred. "What's remarkable is she trusts this dog completely. They share the same faint scent, almost identical. They must have lived together." When the rabbit was set down, another quiet miracle happened. It didn't skitter or shy away. It dove into Nova's chest, tucking beneath her, motionless, calm, as if it had rediscovered its den. Hayes pulled off her glasses, her voice thick as she spoke to the room. 3 species. No blood ties, no common breed, but this is a family. My heart seized. Nova lay down, draping herself over the 2 small bodies, her breathing slow, her eyes drifting shut. She had nothing left to prove. She had kept her family safe. News spread faster than any siren. No headlines, no broadcasts. Yet within hours, all of Portland knew about the skeletal Doberman pup who had guarded a storm drain for 3 days to protect 2 fragile lives. The phone at Dr. Hayes' clinic rang without pause. Calls to adopt, donations wired in, strangers asking only to witness a miracle with their own eyes. But I knew. Nova didn't need flashbulbs or applause. She needed a home, a place where she no longer had to stand watch in desperation. That afternoon, the clinic door opened. The Robinsons stepped inside. Michael, tall, with steady eyes that carried warmth beneath their weight. Laura, clutching her purse as though holding her whole heart in her hands, and their children, Ella, 10, hair like gold falling to her shoulders, eyes wide and shining. Jack, 8, hugging a worn blue dinosaur, was shy but curious. The 4 of them froze. On the tiled floor before them lay Nova, curled protectively around Amber the kitten and Willow the rabbit. 3 small lives, 3 rhythms of breath, yet the room seemed to hold only one shape, the circle of peace. Ella knelt first, her whisper trembling like a secret. "It's Nova, isn't it?" A bright star. No one disagreed. The name hung in the air like destiny. Jack edged closer, eyes glistening. He didn't reach for Nova. Instead, he placed his stuffed dinosaur beside the kitten. "This is my friend. If you cry at night, he'll guard your sleep." Michael's arm drew Laura close. She nodded, tears streaming even as her smile broke through. The adoption moved quickly. There was no doubt. Nova climbed into the Robinsons' minivan without coaxing, without a leash. She lay down between the seats, eyes fixed on Amber and Willow in the children's arms. A week later, I visited. The white gate swung open, revealing a green and shaded area. Beneath a maple tree, Nova stretched out, head resting on Amber while Willow nestled beneath her belly. 3 beings, 3 breaths woven into one hymn of calm. Ella ran to me, voice hushed like a confession. "Every night, before we sleep, Nova checks our rooms. If Jack coughs, she brings him a toy. If Amber cries, she lies beside her." She's never missed once, Jack chimed in, his voice small but firm. "Nova isn't just a dog. She's our guardian." Laura smiled, hand on her son's shoulder. "We didn't just gain a pet. We gained a heart." I looked at Nova. She'd grown a little, but her eyes remained the same, deep, steadfast, loyal enough to make you want to bow before her. She needed no training, no commands. She only knew one truth. Love does not leave. As I walked back through the gate, my chest heavy, then suddenly light, I understood. Not every hero wears armor. Sometimes, a starving pup sitting vigil at a storm drain for 3 endless nights is the fiercest reminder that loyalty and love need no language. Nova had done what most people could not. She stayed when every reason told her to walk away, and because of that, she kept her family whole. When I glanced back one last time, Nova lifted her head beneath the tree. Her dark brown eyes met mine, and for an instant I saw it, the peace she had been searching for her entire short life. She no longer had to guard the shadows. She had found where she belonged. Some heroes need no titles, no training, no promises. Nova was only a frail Doberman puppy. But she chose to stay when the world moved on. And in that choice, 2 small lives were saved, and a new family was born. If this story brought you to tears, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video so more hearts can see that loyalty and love still live among us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss these extraordinary journeys, stories that may stir the same hope within you. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever met an animal that changed how you understood love and loyalty? Tell us your story in the comments. Maybe your story will be the fire that warms someone else's night. Because sometimes we don't need superheroes. We only need a heart that chooses to stay.